For billions, the 9th century accounts of Muhammad's life are the unquestioned historical foundation of a major world religion. However, the primary biographical texts, the Sira and the Hadith, were not compiled until nearly 2 centuries after the events they purport to describe. This timeline maps his traditional life, 610 to 632 AD, against contemporary documentation. Between his death and the first biographies, a silence stretches nearly 200 years. Inside this void, the contemporary record offers no physical trace. The terms Muhammad, Quran, and Islam are absent. To understand these origins, we bypass the later biographies to examine only the contemporary 7th century layer, archaeology, state-minted coinage, and the accounts of foreign witnesses. If the foundational narrative of a global empire is accurate, its earliest conquerors left no physical record of their religion during their own century. Traditional Islamic scholarship asserts the Quran was passed down word for word from a singular revelation, existing as a static text without alteration. Scholars have examined the earliest surviving Quranic manuscripts and documented thousands of physical corrections. This ancient manuscript provides the physical record of these edits. We see erasures, overwrites, and additions inserted between the lines of the original Arabic script. These edits are most visible in palimpsests, manuscripts where original text was washed away to make room for later writing, such as those discovered in the Great Mosque of Sana'a. Under ultraviolet light, the scriptio inferior, the washed-away lower text, becomes visible. It exists beneath the standardized top layer that we recognize today. This hidden lower text contains significant linguistic and structural variants that deviate from the later standardized version of the Quran. The physical evidence of the parchment documents a text in a state of flux. This material record suggests that the standardized Quran emerged through a process of physical correction and textual evolution over time. We turn next to the official records of the state, the coins minted by the early Umayyad rulers, beginning with Muawiya I in 661 AD. As the leader of a new empire, the standard expectation is that his currency would feature Islamic confessions or names. This gold coin shows the actual record. Lacking Islamic identifiers, it features a stepped cross on the reverse. The obverse depicts the caliph holding a cross-topped staff, alongside the phrase Bismillah, used by Christians long before the 7th century. This is corroborated by the 662 AD Gadara Inscription, a public Greek text commissioned by Muawiya. It opens with a cross and makes no mention of an Arabian prophet. During Abd al-Malik's reign, starting in 685 AD, the state record shifts. Purely Arabic script rapidly replaces these earlier symbols on the entire's coinage. The term Muhammad appears here, meaning the praised one. Scholars note that on early coins, this term often functioned as a title for Jesus Christ, accompanied by Christian imagery. Abd al-Malik faced the challenge of unifying a sprawling empire. To distinguish his domain from the Byzantine Christians to the north, he required a distinctly localized Arabian hero. This period saw the title, the Praised One, divorced from its original context and personify into a new historical Arabian prophet. The numismatic record suggests Abd al-Malik personified this title to provide the empire with a localized hero, a necessary tool for geopolitical independence from the Byzantines. The physical record also extends to the Qibla, the foundational direction of prayer that dictates the architecture of every early mosque. While tradition places Mecca at the center of 7th century trade and worship, the city is absent from the trade records and maps of that era. When they map the orientation of the earliest known 7th century mosques, a pattern emerges. Instead of pointing south to Mecca, these vectors bypass the Hijaz entirely. They converge on the ancient city of Petra in modern-day Jordan. Petra was a major regional hub with the archaeological footprint and architectural grandeur that is missing from the 7th century record of Mecca. The geographical focus of the early conquerors was heavily concentrated in the north, suggesting the religious focal point shifted to the southern deserts much later. To verify these findings, we look to the contemporary witnesses from outside the Arab Empire, the Byzantine and Persian observers who recorded the conquests as they happened. we have access to 7th century Greek and Syriac texts, such as the Doctrina Jacobi, written as the Arab armies were expanding. These military accounts never mention an invasion by a new religion called Islam. Instead, they identify the invaders as Hagarenes or Saracens, describing them as a monotheistic coalition operating on a shared Abrahamic lineage. These witnesses suggest the Arab conquests were part of a broad monotheistic movement, rather than a separate religion founded on a new revelation. To foreign observers documenting the 7th century, the distinct theology and religious identity of Islam had not yet been firmly established. Returning to the timeline of the Silent Century, we have documented northern Qiblas, Christian coinage, and fluid manuscripts. This physical record stands apart. In the 9th century, a finalized Islamic biography emerges, physically disconnected from the artifacts of the preceding 200 years. Where written tradition contradicts the coinage and archaeology of the era, the physical record provides the only contemporary witness to the century in question. This evidence suggests that the prophet described in later 9th century texts may be a theological back projection. The diverse Arab empire required a unique religious identity, independent of Judaism and Christianity, to unify its people and centralize its political power. This 7th century evidence reveals a figure potentially developed and codified later, providing the essential unifying identity required for a global power.